Yo, what up, guys? Haven't posted a whole lot of long-term content on my personal channel for a while, but here we go. Story time. The one time I refused to tip a waitress. And this story is actually very fresh. This is rather last weekend, and it was during a UFC pay-per-view where we're watching Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. But let me make something very clear. I actually do tip waitresses very well. I understand that out here in the States, we have a lot of restaurants that only pay people $2 an hour plus tips. So they really rely on surviving those tips. And I also understand that in some places in the world, it's actually an insult to tip because it's like telling waiters or waitresses that they're broke, I believe. But also, the restaurant paying system works completely differently in other parts of the world. So tipping might not be that necessary, if I'm not mistaken. But I also understand that some waiters and waitresses work really hard to give good service. And sometimes people ring up like $200 checks at a restaurant and sometimes leave no tip. So when I tell waiters and waitresses, hey, I feel your angst when you have to depend on the kindness for others to make a livable payment, I totally understand it because it's a very gray area. But every time I've gone out to a restaurant and I've had a really great waiter or waitress, and usually more often than not, I do. Sometimes I chalk it up to maybe that person's just having a bad day. I'm very observant of the room. Not every customer is polite. Some are very rude. That could put a waiter or waitress in a bad mood all day. Not everyone has the same stress release tactics. Like, I exercise a lot, and I actually do BJJ on the side as a hobby. So my aggression and aggravation levels are quite low. But like I said, not everybody has that release or hobby. So sometimes I understand, and usually if I get like really poor service, I still tip, but I also let management know that, yeah, that waiter or that server probably needs some more training or anything like that, because I also understand that there are new servers and new waiters, new waitresses and everything like that. Life is overall a gigantic gray area, and you really have to pick your judgments and pick how you go about judging people. But there are some instances like the one I'm about to bring up where, okay, you know what? I'm done asking questions. You're just being straight up rude. The service here has been terrible again and again. I'm not doing this. But we're going to have to go back 2 months ago, and it was another pay-per-view that was taking place at night, and I believe it was Roundtree versus Pereira. I sit down at a table in the center, and I have a waitress who is walking around. She takes our orders, and I say, okay, you know what? Thank you very much for taking my order. I'll have this Shirley Temple, please. I order my food. Usually I go with the club sandwich, fries, and some coleslaw. I like to get down like that. I know coleslaw is a bit of a controversial subject, but I like it. Deal with it. But often it takes probably 5 minutes for one server to get a drink to the table. Because I've actually worked as a server when I was in college. And let me tell you, it's actually really not that hard to get drinks to certain tables and to have all the table numbers recognized. And you could just, if you have a big table of a bunch of people, you can say, okay, who had the Dr. Pepper? Who had the Diet Dr. Pepper? Who had the Pepsi? Pretty much, if you know your stuff, you are going to get by just fine. But I was actually waiting for 3 of my buddies to show up. I was the only guy at the table. In fact, I want to get all my food now so she didn't have to deal with me when my friend showed up, if my friend showed up. Which they did, but they actually all kind of drank a bunch of water, so it really wasn't a problem. But it's a sports bar, so you have 10 dudes in the corner throwing a party and, just having a good time, throwing down some drinks. But about 15 minutes go by, and I look around, and I look for my waitress, and it turns out she is flirting with all of these dudes, letting them draw on her with marker, and then she turns around and sees and freezes up, and I say, excuse me, ma'am, are you going to get my drink at all? And she seizes up, and she says, I'm really sorry, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I just let it go. I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking, look, if you have time to let guys draw on you, you at least have time to get the people their drinks, because there's not a lot of tables that were full. At that point in the time, we were at the prelims in the card, so it was probably me and one other dude sitting at a different table. But another 10 minutes goes by, and nobody even brings my drink, and I have to flag down another waiter to come, and this guy comes in, and it's just another dude. You can tell he works with management, and he's like, oh, sorry about that, sir. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Just can I please get my drink and please get my order? please, and just for everything. And he's like, yeah, no, I'll be really quick with you. So he actually took over. He made up and picked up the slack. So I tipped him like $5 on a $20 tip. $20 check. But that was a pretty makeup thing. I got everything done. I was able to cash out even before the main card started. So by the time everything wrapped up on that card and Alex Pereira retained the title, I was ready to go home. But then fast forward 2 months later, because the card in between this and that one, it was a day card. So I went there for lunch where it was very not busy and the day crew was amazing. So there really was no problem. But then we have to go into this current month or this last weekend. And I have 2 of my buddies come to meet me at the restaurant, and I sit down by a booth. They seat us down, and I order my drink and my food. And this waitress takes the order, but again, it's the same situation. We're early in the night. She does not. She's not the one to actually deliver my food. It was actually the hostess that delivered my food, and I asked, like, why isn't she delivering the food, or why isn't she taking the orders or cashing out the check or ringing me up? In fact, overall, the hours we were there, out of all those hours, she only basically asked us for refills like once every hour or something like that, which, isn't too bad, but it just kind of shows that I've had servers and waitresses and waiters who have came by like 3 times in 20 minutes just to check up and see everybody is doing okay, like staying on top of it. But then one of my buddies decides, hey, do you want to go split some wings? I'm like, you know what? That actually sounds pretty good. I'm trying to flag down this waitress, and like 3 times she looks at us, rolls her eyes, and walks past. And I'm like asking the people in charge over there, like, why isn't she coming by? And it's like I don't know what the answer they were going to give was. I didn't really get a clear one. But basically, she was acting like she was too good to serve us, or she got a quote-unquote bad vibe from us, so she's just not going to do her job. So she takes way too long and finally pops an attitude with us and comes over to the table and looks at us like, okay, are you ready to order anything else? When it's been 2 hours, we wanted these wings ago, but we kind of just changed our mind. And I just said, you know what, ma'am, excuse me, I'll take the check, please. Meanwhile, she's going to every other table like 5 or 6 times in a row, back to back, and just leaves me there. And I actually go to write down the tip, but I actually had to sit down and think, and okay, she hasn't asked us if we need anything or she refilled our waters or anything like that at all. And I'm not just sitting here bumming free waters off of her. I actually ordered a sandwich again. So on the total, I added nothing to the total. I just wrote down the retail price that I paid for the sandwich and the fries and the slaw. And I crossed out the entire tip section because I had had enough. After 2 times and 2 bad experiences with this restaurant and the one that I went to and the waitresses that were there, I actually had taken it to the low level and I blacked out the tip section and I handed it to a waitress that I actually trusted. And I said, look, I know you're not in charge of me tonight, but you're always awesome. So is it all right if you could just help turn the bill in, please? And also maybe refill me and my friends' waters, please, if you could get a chance and come by, because they've been ignored all night. And my friends were saying the same thing, like, you're not tripping by pulling this attitude. I tried to get my own drinks. They didn't even stop by my table, and I'm pretty sure it's because after they saw that I crossed out the tip section, they were willing to play petty too. But during the last fight on the card, me and my friends took turns going to the bathroom, and the waitress saw me after I had blacked out the tip thing, and she like ran to the back. Like I was, how could I call it? Like I was going into Hulk phase or something like that. Like the look on her face and the look of avoidance on her face made it look like I was like radiating green energy and I was like becoming the Hulk or something like that. But I was actually in a completely normal mode. I was just going to the bathroom because I already made up in my mind that I'm not returning back to this restaurant. Like I don't know why she thinks that I would actually want to come back after that. But obviously the person who was serving us had some severe problems and liked to exaggerate like how bad we were actually being. Because you know how narcissistic people are nowadays. Is they just find whatever reason to hate you because you disapprove of them or you don't approve of everything that they do or you give them valid criticism like I was doing right here. And on the way out after the final main event with John Jones and Stipe wrapped up, me and my friends kind of walked out. And again, she's avoiding us like the plague and then pointing at us like we were the ones who were the bad men. And the manager was like caught between a rock and a hard place. And the manager wanted to really talk to me, but I just didn't even want to talk. And I said, look, man, I already made up my mind. I am not coming back to this restaurant. And I didn't deny to tip to make a point that this is not how you treat longtime customers coming to your establishment, especially when he's bringing friends to order food and beer for you guys too. Because not only did I give you guys a ton of business, but I also brought friends over and they gave you business too. And if this is how I'm going to be repaid, I'm going to tell all my friends to steer clear from this place. And me and my friends just kind of walked out and left. And I think the moral of the story basically is that business is based on reciprocity. And especially if you're a business owner, you have to keep delivering the goods as much as you want, so that the customer actually wants to come back. Because the second you stop serving the customer and stop giving them a good experience or stop giving them a good product, even if you're in charge, if these small business owners, especially nowadays, they all tend to think that like, oh, who's going to be my boss? When you're in charge like that, here's the thing. The public is your boss. And if I was to own a restaurant, I would be very adamant about how attentive my waiters and waitresses were. And there would be certain things that I would just not tolerate as a manager. But I haven't had any problem because I was with some really awesome waitresses the past couple years I was going to this bar. And I usually tip them like sometimes 40%. Imagine that. But the second they had that disconnect and the second that they had some people on the staff who were treating me like I just wasn't worthy to be eating at that table, and let me be honest, the sandwiches that I were ordering, I could probably make the same thing at my home for half the cost. It's the second I withdraw my generosity and withdraw my gratitude, because at that point, there's nothing worth being grateful for. And I honestly encourage more people to actually be that way too. Tip well the waitresses that do good service. Incentivize good service in the service industry. And then if you have a waitress that's popping off an attitude or just being rude, don't tip them. Because, although I understand that a lot of restaurants make it so that their employees have to live off of tips, that sympathy can get shut down the second I'm actually being treated like I'm an inconvenience for showing up to the restaurant in the first place. But that's what I got to say. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope the frustration kind of resonated with you at some point in your life. But I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.